My name is Chitra Saundar. I write for children. I've written over 60 books for children. Some of the recent ones are Sona Sharma, A Friend Indeed, Nikhil and Jay Flying High, It's Time to Hush and Say Goodnight. These are some of the recent books. I was always writing as a kid, but I was also primarily an oral storyteller because we grew up in a family full of storytellers. My grandma told me stories all the time. My mum was an improv playwright, and she created an amateur drama club, so we used to go up on stage and act all the time. When we used to do sleepovers and stuff at my granddad's house, I used to tell stories to my cousins, and so I was always telling stories, but I was also writing other things on the side. Like I used to write poetry, and I used to write essays and non-fiction. Fiction was more of a oral thing at that time, and then eventually I started writing. And then when I was living in Singapore, I published my first book, and I met a publisher there who gave me lots of opportunities to hone my craft. I wrote lots of non-fiction, fiction. I wrote for their school magazines, while I was also then sending lots of stories out to the Western publishers, published in a lot of magazines in the US. And then I got my first picture book in India, which did really, really well. And then I got a few more, and lots of people knew me from those Indian books because I brought them here. And then I started publishing in the UK. So this is my first ever book that got published, which is a series of retellings of folk tales that my grandmother had told me, along with Catherine Lim. So we put all our stories together. Simple retelling of the stories. Like this is a story that about a yak, which is an animal that lives in the Himalayas, wanting to find a home. So it obviously lives in the snowy capped mountains, but then he goes through the different other landscapes in India. The UK, this is my first book with Walker Books, A Dollop of Ghee and a Pot of Wisdom. I thought I want to make them much more accessible, not as a story that came from a long time ago. So I created two boys. Instead of the two men, the king and his minister kind of stories, I changed the setting, I changed the characters, but kept the spine of the story. So there are 3 books in this series, and in each book, Veera and his friend Suku solve problems which are about fairness and honesty and truth, and they're all trickster tales.